The Senate will come to order. Order business number 4, reports of committees.
Madam President Pro Tempore, your Committee of the Whole, to which was referred Senate Bill 1, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Nicole Cannizzaro, Chair. End of messages.
Thank you. Order business number 12, second reading and amendment.
Senate Bill 1, introduced by the Committee of the Whole, revises provisions governing stadium infrastructure projects. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
I have amendment number 1, proposed by the Senate Committee of the Whole.
Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move to adopt Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill number 1.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Any remarks from the floor?
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill number 1 makes various changes to the substance of the bill, including some financing mechanisms, clarifying the taxes to be collected, clarifying pieces of the community benefits agreement, appointments to the Stadium Board and the Community Benefits Board, requires diversity appointments among those, and includes provisions for prevailing wages to be paid on monorail projects, and then also paid leave for businesses receiving tax abatements. This particular amendment was just debated and discussed in the Committee of the Whole and is in substance what is contained within the whole of Senate Bill number 1.
Thank you. Are there any further remarks? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Are there any... Senator Titus.
Nay.
You have remarks? Or just a vote?
Just vote.
Are there any other remarks or any other votes that we have not seen or taken? Again, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Are there any additional amendments?
There are none.
Thank you. Then Senate Bill 1, the amendment number 1 is adopted and ready for final action.
Madam
Senate
President,
I'm sorry.
Madam President
Yes.
Pro Tempore, may we go to order of business number 9?
Order business number 9.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move that all necessary rules be suspended, reprinting be dispensed with, and that Senate Bill number 1 be declared an emergency measure under the Constitution and placed on third reading for immediate consideration.
Thank you. Are there any objections? If not, so ordered. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Now we will go to order of business 13, third reading and final passage.
Senate Bill 1, introduced by the Committee of the Whole, revises provisions governing stadium infrastructure projects. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, do enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any other amendments to the bill as a whole?
There are none. Section 46 into Section 46, end of bill.
Thank you. Are there any remarks from the floor? Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. Senate Bill number 1 enacts the Southern Nevada Tourism Innovation Act to establish a method to finance the design, entitlement, acquisition, construction, improvement, repair, demolition, reconstruction, equipment financing, promotion, leasing, subleasing, management, operation, or maintenance of a Major League Baseball stadium project. This bill requires the Clark County Board of County Commissioners to create a sports and entertainment improvement district located at the southeast corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Tropicana Avenue in unincorporated Clark County to assist in financing the Major League Baseball team stadium project. The district must only include parcels of land or portions thereof on which the Major League Baseball stadium project is located or will be located, and certain surrounding necessary or adjacent properties, but must not include any operating hotel, public accommodations facility, or any operating licensed gaming establishment. The board must issue general obligations of the county upon the request of the Board of Directors of the Clark County Stadium Authority, and once certain requirements are met, any proceeds from the general obligations must be distributed to the Stadium Authority and used for purposes related to the Major League Baseball Stadium project. Further, the bill requires, under certain circumstances, the state treasurer to provide a credit enhancement on bonds issued to finance construction of the Major League Baseball Stadium project and appropriates $14 million from the state general fund to the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank Fund for the credit enhancements. Additionally, the bill authorizes the Stadium Authority to approve not more than $36 million in transferable tax credits in a fiscal year, or $180 million in total for all qualified projects in this state. The bill requires the Board of County Commissioners to create a Clark County Homelessness Prevention and Assistance Fund to assist people who are at risk of becoming homeless or are currently experiencing homelessness. As part of the development and operation of the Major League Baseball Stadium project, the bill requires the development of a community benefits agreement and the creation of a baseball stadium community oversight committee to oversee the implementation and administration of the community benefits agreement. The bill also requires certain new or existing expanding businesses with 50 full-time employees to provide certain family and medical leave to employees in order to qualify for partial abatement of certain taxes. Finally, Senate Bill 1 requires the payment of prevailing wages on any work, construction, alteration, repair, or other employment performed, undertaken, or carried out by or for the railroad company or any person operating the same, regardless of whether a public body is party to the contract. Similarly, the work of or incident to the installation or operation of a monorail may be subject to prevailing wage requirements. This bill is effective upon passage and approval, with the exception of certain provisions that become effective upon the date that Major League Baseball authorizes a Major League Baseball team to locate or relocate within the Sports and Entertainment Improvement District. Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I would urge my colleagues' support.
Thank you. Senator Sears-Gansert.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I urge support of Senate Bill 1. Las Vegas has been and continues to be the entertainment capital of the world. We have gaming, we have live shows and entertainment, and now we have professional sports. We've seen tremendous success with Allegiant Stadium and the Raiders. The projected visitation is almost 2 times what we thought it was going to be, and we also expected about 40% of individuals to be from out of state who are out of the region who attend those games, and it's been closer to 65%. It's brought an enormous amount of capital and visitors to Las Vegas. This new stadium is a nice fit in that it'll be larger than T-Mobile but smaller than Allegiant. It's in the right place. It's in this exciting city, and will be a tremendous venue. It also helps to diversify the hospitality economy. Again, we went from just gaming to gaming and entertainment, and now we've got professional sports, and we know how exciting that is. Baseball also is so family friendly. This team will bring individuals who can attend at a very low cost, which I think is really positive for the families of Las Vegas and Clark County and those who choose to visit. There's been a lot of discussion about the investment by the state. The net investment is $60 million in tax credits. And if you look at some of the legislation that we passed last session, even look at some of the bills at the end of session, this is less money than what we spent on a couple of the bills that we had at the end of session. And we expect significant returns as far as finances, but also the prestige that we have with Nevada and Las Vegas as the hospitality capital of the world. So I urge support of this. I think it's a great investment for our state, and that will yield tremendous returns for years to come. Thank you.
Senator Harriman.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I just wanted to rise and give my support to this bill. I think it addressed many concerns as we vetted the process and many questions that came up. I think that a lot of those concerns were taken care of. This is by far definitely a jobs bill. It'll provide many jobs, not only now but in the future. It expands the economy, as was mentioned by my colleague from the north. I think there's enough proper clawbacks and incentives in the bill itself to make it worthwhile. I think we're going to have a stadium waiting for a team to come. That team, whoever that might be, will have a total investment of over $1 billion into this project. What we are contributing is about 23 to 24% of it. We have shown that Vegas has become an entertainment center, and this is just going to add to that, as was mentioned. I mean, we have already the Las Vegas Aces, who brought us our very first very first championship, professional championship. We have the Raiders, and of course we have the Knights that will be playing tonight, as we heard in our prayer this morning. And I think this is going to expand that. I'm waiting for baseball, so the only thing I can say is let's play ball.
Thank you. Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I'm pretty sure folks know where I stand on this, and I'm not going to retread all of those points, but I did just want to take a quick moment to thank the proponents of this bill for engaging in what was substantive conversation with our caucus. The amendments that were proposed clearly were responsive to the concerns that we raised, including changing it to a $14 million set aside versus a $25 million, including DEI metrics for the stadium authority, nailing down the location of the stadium, tightening up the community benefit agreements, and tweaking some changes to the stadium authority board structure. All of those changes were made with us in mind, and I very much appreciate it, but will be a no today. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, as we embark on hopefully our last vote here of the session, I came into this hearing today expecting to vote yes on this bill. And I have to say that I'm troubled by the amendments, but I also was elected to do what I think is in the best interest of 3.2 million people. And I came in here excited about this project, and I wanted to explain why. I wanted to look at public incentives and my philosophy on public incentives. And the questions I ask myself when I'm confronted with these types of expenditures is, would I make the same investment with my own money? And is there a good return on investment for the taxpayers? And in a worst case scenario, what happens when things go south for the taxpayers? If I was not a senator and was offered a chance to invest in this project as a state is being asked to do, would I do it? And the simple answer and the complicated answer is yes. Las Vegas is unquestionably the entertainment capital of the world. More than 1.5 times our population come to Nevada each year to enjoy themselves, deposit billions of dollars into our economy, which brings significant tax revenue to our state. I jokingly thank friends that visit me for their contributions to our economy, subsidizing what other people pay in other states as a state income tax. Now we are on the cusp of becoming the sports entertainment capital of the world. This will bring hundreds of thousands of people to Southern Nevada, infusing our coffers potentially with billions of dollars. Look at the success of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, now fighting tonight, hopefully, to win the Stanley Cup. The Raiders alone have been a tremendous stimulus to our economy, and we are hosting the Super Bowl at Allegiant Stadium in 2024. The Aces, Formula One, WNBA, Las Vegas Aviators, and an NBA team that may be coming in the future, and now Major League Baseball with this bill and the athletics potentially coming here. If we look at the return on investment, the 30,000-seat stadium with a retractable roof is expected to cost about $1.5 billion. Not only will this be the home of the Las Vegas A's and their approximately 80 home games, but it could also be the site of future World Series and many other entertainment events, necessitating a stadium of this unique size here in Nevada. We don't have a 30,000-seat stadium. We've got one that's about 60,000, one that's about 12,000. And many events get turned away because of that unique capacity. The REIT that owns the Tropicana will donate 9 acres to the stadium. The value of that will approximately be $100 million, which eventually is going to be the taxpayers' property. I haven't seen that being recognized or quantified. The owner of the athletics is contributing $1.1 billion in cash. In addition, it's not the taxpayers' time, but rather on the owner's dime. The taxpayers of the state of Nevada ultimately will own the stadium and ultimately own the land that the stadium is sitting on. So at a minimum, I calculate $1.21 billion is going to be privately funded, or the private sector will be financing 80.6% of this project. Why is a public incentive being even considered? Unfortunately, we're not alone in cities that want to attract a major league baseball team. We're competing with other states, other cities. And Major League Baseball encourages such public-private partnerships. You see, without saying it, the public entity participating in the cost of building the venue is really a long-term financial partner. We're financial partners with the A's. Every citizen in Nevada is a beneficiary of the potential income derived from this investment. The citizens of Nevada, North and South, will forever derive significant income from establishing the team here for decades. That's in the billions of dollars. If Nevada were to say no, I know Mr. Fisher, who owns the team, has backup cities salivating in their hope of securing this team away from Nevada. Our projected subsidy of 25%, and I believe it to be closer to 20%, is one of the lowest such subsidies of a Major League Baseball stadium in the nation. And this is the largest investment of any baseball team, owner, or company in a stadium. So what is our investment as the state of Nevada, and what's our risk? We're putting up $180 million in transferable tax credits. In other words, taxes owed by a third party having such credits can reduce their tax bills in Nevada by the same amount. Nevada is not writing a check from the general fund for $180 million, but rather this is a credit against future taxes owed to the state. 2/3 of the $180 million is being required to be paid back to the state. That's a tremendous improvement from its prior iteration. So the net exposure of the state by helping fund the stadium is $60 million. And there's a lot of protections in this agreement so that we don't go into default, so that we have a backstop. And we recognize that backstop during COVID when Allegiant Stadium wasn't able to make their payments and they went into their reserve fund. The protections for the taxpayers are not one reserve fund, but 2 reserve funds. And assuming that the stadium comes in a budget, the total state of Nevada, not including Clark County's investment, is just 4%, $60 million at a $1,500 million or $1.5 billion. And remember, if the owner defaults, all funds must be paid back that we expended or bonded by the state in Clark County, and the state will own the stadium and the land free and clear. One thing that I think we always want to do is to bring jobs to Nevada. And this does bring a lot of jobs. 14,000 construction jobs, 8,000 operations jobs, 9,000 jobs created from the enhanced tourist visitations. Long-term, at a minimum, the citizens of Nevada will see a 300% return on their investment that we're making. And the land and the stadium will become a state asset. There's also augmentations to our homeless fund, 1% of the ticket sales, or a $1.5 million minimum, to help programs that we all support to try to help those that find themselves on extremely hard times. There's also going to be a fund for off-site infrastructure requirements for surrounding areas, surrounding cities. Section 22H provides that adequate contribution by the developer partner for the construction of improvements of any infrastructure off the site of the project that is determined to be necessary for the project by the Nevada Department of Transportation. These are going to be conditions that are going to be done by the County of Clark Public Works Department and will be commensurate with the mitigation measures that are going to be needed. 15% of the project also must be given to small Nevada businesses. I strongly support this provisions. And new taxes paid by increased tourism to the state shall be deposited into the general fund for the benefit of not just Southern Nevada, but for the benefit of the entire state, north and south, which we can then use to augment education, augment public safety, and augment other special programs that are important to this body and to the state. So in summary, this project will bring Nevada closer to becoming the sports entertainment capital of the world. Our public investment is one of the lowest ever done in the country for a stadium like this at 20 to 25%. The owner-developer is required to fully reimburse the state if it defaults in the 30-year agreement, not limited to, but including the relocation of the team within the time period. Hence, it is a small risk for the state. And as I mentioned before, small businesses win with this proposal, with this partnership, and more money funded to homeless programs to help us deal with this humanitarian crisis. Also, which really hasn't been emphasized, is that the existing Tropicana Hotel is a vastly underperforming asset today. The owners have not made any significant investments in it, and as a result, it does not contribute a whole lot of money to the general fund in comparison to the value and the build-out potential of this property. So by having the stadium on 9 acres, and I think it was a very good business decision for this REIT to donate these 9 acres, it's going to make those 26 acres extremely valuable to put a very large, upscale, modern, beautiful resort to attract even more visitors to Nevada. And it's going to generate revenue that's commensurate with some of our other larger, successful venues like the Palazzo, the Wynn, and some of these other more modern properties on the Las Vegas Strip. And with that revenue, we can even fund and create more beneficial programs. So, my friends, I came in mixed today. Of course, we don't like to see amendments like we did at the last minute. It just clouds things for some of us. But we have to not take our eye off the ball on what we're trying to accomplish. And one thing I've learned in government in 30 years of doing this is you don't always get 100% of what you want. I'm getting about 90% of what I want in this agreement because I think it's in the best interests of our constituents. And so I'll close with an inspirational quote by Jackson Burnett called, "The past never ends." 1,000 years from now, nobody's going to know that you or I ever lived. The cynic is right, but lazy. He says, you live, you die, and nothing you do will ever make a difference. But as long as I live, I'm going to be like Beethoven and shake my fist at fate and try to do something for those who live here now, who know how far into the future that it will go. If I accomplish nothing more than making my arms soar, at least I will be satisfied that I have lived. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Senator Neal. Senator Neal.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I'm going to keep this fairly brief. I'm rising in opposition to SB 1, but I want to say a couple of things. Number one, I'm super appreciative of the leadership that we have had, the Democratic leadership that we have had in this particular building, leading us through this second special session, number one. This was not an easy task. It was also not easy to push forward and bring us to what I believe is a better bill than the original version that was presented to us. I think there's a fundamental philosophical difference around should we be using public money to fund stadiums. I didn't vote for the Raiders when they asked for public funding of $750 million. I don't believe that the arguments that are being made that somehow we're a corporation, therefore we should be giving public dollars, that falls flat because we're actually a state, not a corporation, where we're examining whether or not an investment is appropriate, an appropriate imperative to give to a billionaire to finance a building. However, the imperative of the state is to take care of the needs of our citizens, healthcare, education, other severe needs. And so, I just want to put that on the record that these requests that, comparing the state to a corporation who should look at the bang for the buck rather than the public investment dollars that are going to be used, which actually is setting a bad precedent. Because if we see in the paper, it entitled other companies to come in and then put their hand out for what they can afford to do without help. And so I rise in opposition, but I just wanted to say on the record that I appreciate the leadership of our caucus. I appreciate the leadership that has brought us forward. And I think that they're amazing people that I'm serving with, even though we're in a philosophical difference. But I support and respect the decisions that are made on this bill.
Thank you, Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Temp. I also just wanted to echo a little bit about my stance. And first of all, I want to say thank you to my constituents and folk who have reached out expressing tremendous concern about this particular bill. They have every single right to be heard, and they have every single right to express their concerns. And I echoed many of those concerns at the very beginning of this conversation. But I also negotiate in good faith. And during the hearing, every single request that I made was fulfilled. I had concerns about not having the community benefits agreement more narrowly tailored and more specific as to exactly what the floor was going to be, and that language was added to the bill. I wanted to see more firm commitments, and that language was added to the bill. I also had concerns that we were forced into a special session and that we were no longer just negotiating with our partners in the building, but we were also negotiating with other branches of government, as this body does. And they worked in good faith with us. So I could not pretend that after all that I requested took place, that I then could turn around and not support this. But more importantly than that, in speaking about our particular leadership, we have a majority leader who hasn't slept in about a month, who has a beautiful child who was born, and we all got to witness her come back a few days after that, get called into 2 special sessions. We had individuals who unfortunately have sick relatives who they need to go back to and take care of. We had individuals who their employer was expecting them to be at the job as of Tuesday. We had individuals who canceled vacations. We had folk miss birthdays. We had folk miss a whole host of incredibly important things. And yet we all stayed, and we all muscled through this, particularly watching our majority leader, because if she was doing it, none of us had any excuse not to do the same work. But to everybody who is watching, they have to know that there's been endless nights, endless amendments, endless fights back and forth, and working in good faith, and trying to get the best possible deal for Nevadans, that we now have a community agreement that is better than any other we've ever seen in this country. That is a testament to the human beings, and I am taking zero credit for that. That is testament to the human beings who were leading this fight. And on that basis alone, I have to stand here. Because I assure every Nevadan, even those of you who have concerns about this bill, I assure you that if you see where the bill started and where it is now, that there's not a single Nevadan that won't say this bill is much better now. But more importantly, if any one of you would have had an opportunity to be in those rooms with us and watch the amazing human beings, particularly, and as we all know, it's a women-led majority, watch the women, the work that they did, and that I could sit there and absorb and watch and learn from that. That I had a responsibility to stand alongside of the decisions that were made. And so with that, I am ready for the consequences and the criticism that will come with this vote. But I am also ready to see a whole host of people working. I am also ready to see a whole host of people who are criticizing this deal, just like they did with the Allegiant Stadium, and demonstrate that Nevada always overperforms. I am ready to demonstrate that we're going to hold anybody who's put our hand out there to have a firm handshake as a partner with Nevadans, that we're going to hold them accountable every step of the way. I'm also ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Danyate.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Temp. I also rise in support of Senate Bill 1. I do have just a quick few remarks. Number one, I agree with my colleague. I think that within the time frame that this bill was introduced in the 82nd legislative session to the special session that we have before us today, and also from the presentation to what we're voting on, I believe that there are provisions in this legislation that have put more restrictions into actually delivering for the people of this state. I do want to mention a few things. Number one, my colleague mentioned of amendments that were accepted and reflected in this bill, and I want to touch point on a few of them. During my line of questioning, I mentioned that I had concerns with the homelessness provisions of the bill. I felt that it was too centered and narrowed towards the resort corridor, and the bill before us today has now expanded that to Clark County. I think that's important. We know that there are surrounding neighborhoods, particularly down the street from where I live, that is an issue that needs to be addressed. Second, I mentioned and reiterated my opposition to not being able to address the traffic concerns that the residents in my district were going to experience, considering the proximity to where we live. And the amendment before us also includes that. And then I also want to mention that the amendment also addresses one thing, which is probably historical in this state. With the amendment that we have today, there are now considerations for paid family and medical leave. That itself is a big deal. For years, families in this state have advocated for that luxury. We know that there are workers in this state that when they get sick, they're not able to take the appropriate time. I myself have had workers for the companies that I've worked for not being afforded that same luxury. And so we are setting a new standard as to how business is done in this state. And to end my remarks as to what led to what my support is for this bill, I think it goes to show that my personal background is I am the proud son of casino workers. My family members, as I've reiterated over and over again, work in the casinos. My dad has worked in the casinos for 20 years. My grandma worked at the Stratosphere. We all worked at the Stratosphere. And I have relatives all across the Las Vegas Strip. I had concerns with the bill of how workers would be displaced. And what I have, based on my internal conversations, is that the people of that particular district will be protected. But I also want to reiterate that when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit, my family members were the ones that were laid off, and I was the one that had to fill out their unemployment forms. It was a frustrating experience. It was an experience that I felt no child should ever have to go through. And so when I think about this proposal and the jobs that it can provide, I would hope that at least some child does not face the same circumstance that I did, and so I support this bill and the jobs that will be created and the lives that will be shaped beyond this bill. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any senators that are participating remotely that would like to speak? No from Senator Scheibel. No from Senator Hansen. Yes from Senator Hansen. Okay, Senator Hansen. Hold on, you're on mute, I think. I think you're still on mute.
Madam President Pro Tem, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Well, first of all, thank you. So everyone knows the delivery is coming along fine, and hopefully by the end of the day today, Alexis and I will be grandparents again. I apologize I didn't get to hear all the debates on the amendment. I did read some text and so forth. I think there is one, and I agree with Senator Neal, and that is there's a huge philosophical gap going on here. All of this sounds good. And as my colleague said, if this was my money, would I invest in it? The answer is yes, I would. However, it's not my money. We're using taxpayer dollars to finance a private enterprise. And yes, there's lots of good checks and balances, but we're setting once again a very dangerous precedent here. And while the Raiders Stadium to date has performed well, it's a very long-term project. And what I'm more worried about is if you really go back to what Jeremy Aguero said, in his testimony, he mentioned that 43% of the tax revenue for the state of Nevada is now coming from the big mega casinos in Las Vegas. So in the future, if we're going to follow the logic that the Raiders Stadium is going to produce lots of revenue and the A Stadium is going to produce lots of revenue, and that's why we as a government have to use taxpayer dollars to help finance these projects, are we going to do that? Are we going to follow that same logic in the future when another Steve Wynn type shows up and says, hey, I want to build a giant mega resort casino now. And while it may not be an athletic event, it is going to generate billions of dollars over time in tax revenue. Therefore, I want the state of Nevada taxpayers, which we all represent, to now help pay a portion of a mega casino perhaps in the future. And that's where when Senator Neal mentioned that, I think that's what we got to understand. These deals are great, and I have no doubt that the A's will make money. But if that's the case, why are we holding the taxpayers accountable for financing it? If there's that much wealth that's going to be generated here, there are people known as venture capitalists out there who literally have billions of dollars who would love an opportunity to invest in a project that's such a guaranteed profit maker. So I guess for me, and I apologize for missing the amendment and the debate on the amendment, the bigger issue to me is, are we as elected officials, when I ran for office, as you all know, I'm a plumber and I'm not a venture capitalist. I didn't run for state treasurer like Zach Conine did. And I'm not qualified, in my opinion, to make these sorts of giant billion-dollar decisions. Now, maybe there are people in this audience that feel comfortable doing that with taxpayer dollars and not their own dollars, but I don't feel that way. And I feel very uncomfortable telling my taxpayers in Nevada that I'm going to use your dollars and I'm going to use my best judgment, which in the financial world isn't necessarily all that strong, and I'm going to make these kind of decisions for you rather than letting what we used to believe in called the free market make these kind of decisions. Why are we now deciding that the government should replace the free market and let the entrepreneurial types in our communities find a way to finance these sorts of things? These baseball stadiums all across the country for the last, 50 years have been doing this to communities all over the state, all over the nation. And now we're saying, well, we're competing with other places. Well, so be it. When are we going to break that cycle? And at some point, it's going to switch just from athletic events and athletic stadiums to things like casinos and other things that have historically always been financed with private dollars. And that's the philosophical.
I think you went to mute again, Senator Hanson. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Hope you can't hear me again.
We can hear you now.
My apologies. Just a quick reminder. Somehow we couldn't come up with $32 million for 3,000 public school teachers in the charter school system. But here we're coming up with, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of tax credit dollars that could be used for all sorts of things that we always was coming up short on in the state of Nevada. So if we can't come up with money to finance our own public school teachers in the charter schools, how is it we always seem to come up with money for football stadiums and other forms of athletic event stadiums? I think our priorities are messed up. So with that, Madam President Pro Tem, I'm going to vote no. I think honestly, if it was my own money, it's a good deal. I would probably vote yes, but it's not my money. It's the taxpayers' money, and we should do all we can to ensure the private sector does these sorts of investments. And we live up to what used to be called the free enterprise system, that at least in my party, the Republicans, that used to be our gold standard. Let the market decide. The unseen hand of Adam Smith. You know, where did those days go? Now we're all looking as Republicans for figuring out ways to subsidize projects with taxpayer dollars. That used to be called socialism. It was something that we didn't believe in. But apparently now, if it looks like it may work out, hey, let's use taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem, and I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. Anyone else that's participating remotely want to have remarks? Seeing none. So I just want to make a brief statement, and I agree with some of my colleagues who have talked about what this would mean, but I also have heard from some other people who are in disagreement. And I heard from another one of our partners in labor today who is afraid that if this goes south, they're Clark County taxpayer dollars. And that's why I asked the question, if worse comes to worse, and I'm hoping that everything will go well, but if worse comes to worse, who's on the line for this? And I'm going to have to vote no, because I just believe that somebody look at the time and the date, because I'm going to agree with Senator Hansen. Doesn't happen often. You know, but, and it almost feels like, and I just kind of wrestled with this, not just today, but wrestled with this since last week. And I said to someone about 30 minutes ago, I feel like Solomon, and there are two women that showed up and there's one baby. And they're asking, you know, whose baby? And Solomon says, you know, split the baby. And the mother said no. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I'm Solomon or the mother that said no. I just know that I have an obligation to several of my constituents, and someone asked, you know, had I received any positive emails, and I have not. So I will say this, I'm going to vote no, not because I have something against jobs, but there are other jobs, there are other members of labor who have said to me their jobs may be on the line, and so I'm going to side with them, and I'm also going to side on the, I'm going to lay down on the side of some fiscal conservatism, because we didn't know that COVID was coming in 2019, and we don't know if there will be another one. And I just would hate to see that happen, and then people who count on these jobs because taxpayer money has gone to something else, don't have them. But I will pledge to those of you who are proponents, I appreciate everything, and I've thought about everything that you've said, and I will work with whomever wants to work with me, because they did add something in the amendments that dealt with women veterans. Didn't go all the way, but I am certainly willing to work with anyone who is serious about doing that, work with them to make sure that we get something done for women veterans. So it's been a tough struggle, a lot of consternation, and I'm not voting against jobs. I believe in that, and one of the things that I know that will happen, and which is why I press so hard for us to expand our renewable energy resources, is that that is one of the industries that will bring not just jobs, sometimes not just jobs 8 times a year or jobs 81 times a year, but that's something that will bring jobs ad infinitum. So I'm just going to say I'm voting my conscience, and I think that everyone else is as well. Are there any additional remarks from the floor? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, open the roll.
Senator Hansen,
No.
Senator Scheibel,
No.
Senator Titus,
No.
Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? Senate Bill 1, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly. The
That
vote is
concludes-
13 for and 8 against.
that concludes Order Business 13.
Thank you. Order Business 16, remarks from the floor. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until the hour of 1 p.m. on Wednesday, June 14th, 2023.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion carried. We will adjourn until 1 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday, June the 14th. We're adjourned.